Flagpoling has always been a subject which has a bit of a mystery around it as to can you do it, can you not do it, is there going to be any problem, what can happen, why can't you do it when you arrive in Canada for the first time. All those questions are always troubling people. And now recently there has been an update from CBSA. Effective 30th of May, they have now restricted timings at 12 very popular port of entries to say that these are the timings for their flagpoling. Of course, now that has further raised to more confusions. So let's break it down today and understand what is flagpoling and what you can do and what you can't and what you absolutely should not, right? So the first thing is flagpoling basically means you are currently in Canada on a valid status and you exit Canada through the land border. You go towards the US, United States, and you inform the United States immigration officer that you are flagpoling. They will give you an administrative refusal. They will also hand you over a piece of paper which says that you are flagpoling. You then take a U-turn, you return back to the Canadian side, Canadian border. Mind you, now you are entering Canada again. So therefore, you will inform the officer at the Canadian port of entry that you are flagpoling, you are applying for a work permit, you are applying for whatever the status that you are looking to apply for. You will then be directed to the immigration office at the port of entry, and there at the immigration office you will be meeting with the CBSA officers who are also responsible for certain immigration activities. There you will be presenting your case, you will be presenting your application after undergoing certain checks of your documentation and of course asking you certain questions. As an interview process, you may be issued with your permit document. You will of course be paying your fee. There is no requirement for any specific forms. You will just need to carry all the required documents as applicable to your application. For example, if you are applying for a spouse open work permit, you don't really need any forms to be completed, but you must most certainly carry your spouse's valid work permit, marriage certificate, passport copies, employment documents, pay stubs, all of these documents, and of course your medicals. So carry all these documents with you. Be prepared to pay the fee. Be prepared to be answering any questions that the officer might be concerned with. And if everything is good, you will be issued with your work permit and then you are free to go and start working immediately. This in a nutshell is how your flagpoling process will look like. Now, who can do it? Who cannot do it? Well, technically, if you are in Canada on a valid status, you can all basically do it. However, it's not always a recommended step. If you are out of status, if you are looking to restore your status, if you are in a complex situation, certain application types might not be available for at the port of entry during by flagpoling. For example, you cannot apply for a bridge open work permit by flagpoling. There are other certain work permits that are also issued under certain public policies. They can also not be issued at the port of entry by flagpoling. So therefore, you need to be aware what you can and cannot do. Also, when you're appearing at the port of entry on the Canadian side, you have to always remember now you're entering Canada. So you are subject to questions again as may be applicable to you in your case. And if there is ever any issue in your background, then there can always be an issue. Therefore, flagpoling should be a last resort, should never be your first resort. Don't just think that you want a work permit quicker and therefore you should run to the port of entry and go for flagpoling. As I said, this should be a last resort. Most lawyers, consultants would not recommend you with the port of entry process because this is something which you should undergo only if there are pressing circumstances in your case. Earlier, technically, you could basically go to any port of entry and you could flagpole and you could make your case for your application at the port of entry by flagpoling, depending on the circumstances and your application, of course. But now recently, CBSA, who is in charge of all the port of entry operations, has now indicated specific timings at 12 very, very important and popular port of entries. Of this, some of them are in British Columbia, in Quebec, as well as in Ontario. In Ontario, we have always had a specific timing. For example, if you were to go to Rainbow Bridge in Niagara region, there was always a timing from Tuesday to Thursday. Only these 3 days you could flagpole starting from 8 a.m. until midnight. There are a lot of people who would like to get their processes done by flagpoling. So you should be prepared to come there early. You should be prepared to wait. And mind you, they only accept certain number of application based on their processing capacity. So it's not unheard of that you arrive at port of entry in the Niagara region at about say 7:30 and you are refused services because they're already full for the day. So be aware of the port of entry that you're trying to go for flagpoling. Be aware of their timings. The new schedule for their timings for different port of entries has already been published. For some, it is Monday to Thursday. For some, it is Tuesday to Thursday. and the timings also vary. So be aware of your timings, otherwise you would just be making the trip and to no avail.
Also, the confusing aspect that has come up is that are these only these 12 port of entries that will now allow flag polling? Well, that is not true. It's not that only these 12 port of entries will allow flag polling. It just means that only for these 12 port of entries, which seem to be the most popular ones, there are now specific timings and days in a week when you can flag poll. At this point of time, you are still free to flag poll at any other port of entry that have not been included in this list at any point of time. It's always good to call them beforehand to know if they are accepting applications of port of entry or if there are any other restrictions at that point of time.
Finally, all I can say is that yes, flag polling is absolutely a legal process. You can do it, but opt for this route only and only if the circumstances demand it. It's a pressing matter and you need to do it. I hope this helps.